My daughter Linda asked me a question last Christmas that made the entire table go silent. "Mom, how much do you have saved?" 8 people, 8 forks frozen in midair. I looked at her. I said, "That's not your business." Her face went red. My son David cleared his throat. And my daughter Susan, who never says anything uncomfortable out loud, whispered, "Mom, she's just trying to help." But I knew better. Because 3 years ago I answered that question. I told them the number, and within 6 months, I went from being their mother to being their financial planning problem. They didn't call as much, but they texted more, always with suggestions, always with concern, always with this quiet, creeping agenda that I could feel tightening around me like a hand on my throat. My name is Margaret. I'm 83 years old, and I'm going to tell you something that might save your dignity, your family relationships, and the last shred of control you have over your own life. There are 5 questions that after a certain age you should never answer. Not to friends, not to neighbors, and especially not to your own children, because the moment you do, everything changes. They stop seeing you as a person. They start seeing you as a situation. And once that shift happens, you can never fully shift it back. I learned this the hardest way possible. And if you stay with me, I'll tell you exactly what happened and what I did to take my life back before it was too late. I didn't used to be this way. For most of my marriage, for most of my motherhood, I believed honesty was love. If Richard asked me something, I answered. If my children asked, I told them the truth. That's what family meant. No walls, no secrets, just openness. So when David called me one Tuesday afternoon about 6 years ago and asked, "Mom, do you have enough saved? Are you going to be okay?" I didn't hesitate. I told him the number. I gave him the full picture. I told him about Richard's life insurance. I told him about the pension. I told him I was comfortable, more than comfortable actually, that I'd been careful, that we'd planned well, that I wasn't worried. I thought I was reassuring him. But what I was actually doing was opening a door I could never close again. He said, "Oh, wow, that's actually more than I thought." And then for just a second there was this pause, this tiny, barely there silence that I didn't understand at the time. But I understand it now. That pause was him recalculating, not how I was doing, but what I was worth. Question number 1, never tell anyone how much money you have. Not your children, not your siblings, not the friend you've known since 1965. Because the moment you give them a number, you stop being a person. You become a category. If the number is higher than they expected, you become the comfortable one. And comfortable people don't need help. They don't need calls. They don't need tenderness. If the number is lower, you become the one who didn't plan well. And then every conversation becomes advice you didn't ask for. Either way, you lose. Within 2 months of telling David my savings, the questions started. Linda called and asked if I'd thought about setting up a trust. Susan sent me an article about elder financial abuse, like I was some confused old woman about to wire my pension to a stranger in Nigeria. David started asking if I had a financial advisor. "Just someone to keep an eye on things, Mom. In case." In case of what? In case I suddenly forgot how to count? I'd been managing money since before he was born. I'd kept our household running on Richard's modest paycheck, raised 5 children, paid off a mortgage, and still had enough left over to sleep soundly at night. But now, because I'd told them the number, they saw me as someone who needed management. I tried to walk it back. I started being vague. "I'm fine. Don't worry." But it was too late. The number was out there, and once it's out there, it doesn't fade. It sticks. It grows. It becomes the silent backdrop of every conversation. David started talking about liquidity. Linda started mentioning downsizing. And Susan, sweet, quiet Susan, asked me one night very gently if I'd ever thought about what happens if you get sick and need care. I said, "Susan, I'm fine." And she said, "I know, Mom, but we just want to make sure you're protected." Protected, like I was a child, like I was something fragile that needed to be wrapped up and put on a high shelf before I broke. So I stopped answering. When my son-in-law asked very politely if I'd considered long-term care insurance. I smiled and said, "I've got it handled." When Linda pressed me again about my savings, I said, "I sleep fine at night. That's all you need to know." And you know what happened? They got mad. Linda said I was being difficult. David said I was shutting them out. Susan said, "We're just trying to help, Mom." But here's what I noticed. The moment I stopped answering, the questions stopped being about me. They became about them. Their frustration, their need to know, their discomfort with not being in control. And that told me everything. If they'd truly been worried about my well-being, they would have asked how I felt, not how much I had. But they didn't, because once you tell someone your number, their concern stops being about your happiness. It becomes about your management, and I refuse to be managed. Question number 2, never talk about your health in detail. This one is different from telling someone your savings. This one is slower, quieter. It doesn't feel dangerous when it's happening. At first, it feels like caring. Someone asks, "How are you feeling, Mom?" And you answer honestly. You tell them about the knee that's been bothering you, the dizzy spell you had last week, the new medication the doctor put you on because the old one wasn't working. You think you're being open. You think you're letting them in. But what you're actually doing is handing them a list of reasons to treat you like you're fragile. I made this mistake with Linda. She's always been the most emotional of my children, the one who feels everything loudly. When she asks how you are, she really asks. And for a long time, I thought that meant I should really answer. So about 3 years ago, I told her about the fall. I'd gotten up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. I felt dizzy. The floor tilted, and I went down hard in the hallway. It took me 20 minutes to get back up. I didn't break anything. I didn't call anyone. I got myself back to bed and told myself I'd be more careful next time. But a few weeks later, Linda asked how I was doing, and I told her, not because I needed help, but because she's my daughter and I thought that's what mothers did. They told the truth. Linda's face went pale. And from that day forward, every phone call started the same way. "Mom, are you being careful?" Every time I mentioned I was going for a walk, "Mom, are you sure that's safe?" Every time I said I was cleaning out a closet, "Maybe you should wait until someone can help you." I went from being her mother to being her liability. I tried to undo it. I started saying, "I'm fine, honey. Don't worry." But once you've planted the image of yourself on the floor, dizzy and alone, you can't unplant it. It lives in their head. And every time they think of you, that's what they see. So I stopped giving details. Now, when Linda asks how I'm feeling, I say, "Good enough to complain, so I must be doing all right." She laughs. The conversation moves on, and I stay in control of how she sees me. Because here's the truth. After a certain age, every health detail you share becomes evidence. Evidence that you're declining. Evidence that you can't manage on your own. Evidence that something needs to change. And once people start collecting evidence, they start making decisions. And I'm not ready for someone else to make my decisions. I don't know if I ever will be. Question number 3, never tell them how you spend your days. This one surprised me. For years, I thought my children wanted to know what I was up to. So when they asked, I'd tell them, honestly, plainly. I spent the morning reading. I took a walk around the block. I sat on the porch for a while and watched the birds. And I could hear it, this tiny shift in their voice. "That's nice, Mom." But what they meant was, "That's all?" Because to them, a quiet day sounded like an empty day. And an empty day meant I was lonely. And loneliness meant I needed saving. So Linda started suggesting things. "Have you thought about joining a group? There's a book club at the library. Susan mentioned a senior center that does activities." She meant well. I know she did. But what she didn't understand was that I liked my quiet days. I liked the mornings where I didn't have to be anywhere. I liked sitting with my coffee and not explaining myself to anyone. But the moment I told her what my days looked like, she decided they weren't enough. So I stopped telling her. Now when Linda asks what I did today, I say, "Oh, you know, kept busy." It's vague, it's light, and it keeps her from turning my piece into her project. Because here's what I've learned. People who are still drowning in their own chaos can't understand stillness. They see it as emptiness. They see it as something that needs to be filled. But I don't need filling. I need space. And I'm not going to apologize for that anymore. Question number 4. Never answer questions about your will. This is the one that destroys families. I've watched it happen. A parent sits everyone down, trying to be fair, and explains how they've divided things up. The house goes here. The savings go there. It all makes perfect sense on paper. But the moment you say it out loud, you create a wound that never fully heals. I almost made this mistake. A few years ago, I thought about telling my children what I'd decided. I thought it would prevent confusion later. I thought it would be kind. But then I talked to my sister Jean. Jean had done exactly that. She'd sat her 3 kids down and told them how she was splitting her estate. She thought she was being transparent. Within a month, 2 of them stopped speaking to each other. She told me, "Margaret, I thought I was being clear." But what I did was turn love into math. And now, every time we talk, I can feel them calculating. So I didn't say anything. I wrote it down. I put it with my lawyer. And when David asked, very casually one afternoon, "Mom, have you thought about what happens to the house?" I said, "It's all taken care of. You don't need to worry." He pressed. I didn't budge, and I could feel his frustration. But I also felt my freedom. Because the moment you tell them who gets what, they stop seeing you as their mother. They start seeing you as the obstacle between them and what they think they deserve. And I refuse to become an obstacle in my own family. Question number 5. Never talk about your loneliness. This one is the hardest to hold back. Because after a certain age, loneliness becomes a companion. Not every day, but enough days that it's there, sitting quietly in the corner of every room. And when someone asks, "Are you lonely, Mom?" every part of you wants to say yes. You want to tell them that some mornings you go hours without hearing your own voice, that the UPS driver is the only person you speak to all week, that the silence in this house is so thick sometimes you can barely breathe through it. But if you say it, if you admit it, you become their emergency. I saw this happen to a woman I used to know named Helen. She told her daughter she was lonely. And within 3 weeks, the daughter had moved her into an assisted living facility. For your own good, Mom. You need people around you. But what she really meant was, I can't carry your loneliness anymore. So I'm putting you somewhere where someone else can. So I don't say it. When Linda asks if I'm lonely, I say, I have my moments. But I also have my routines. It's true. It's honest, and it doesn't make me her burden, because here's what I know now: people can't fix loneliness. They can visit more. They can call more, but they can't solve it. And when they realize that, they start to resent you for it. So I protect them from it, and in doing so, I protect myself. Now let me tell you what happened when I stopped answering. Because this isn't just a story about what not to say. It's about what I found when I finally went silent. About 2 years ago, I made a decision. I stopped explaining. I stopped defending. I stopped trying to make my children comfortable with the life I was living. At first, it was terrifying. I thought they'd pull away. I thought they'd stop calling altogether. But something strange happened instead. The less I said, the more they respected me. Linda stopped trying to fix my days. David stopped asking about my finances. Susan stopped suggesting I needed more help. Because when you stop giving people problems to solve, they stop seeing you as a problem. They start seeing you as a person again, and that's all I ever wanted. I started noticing things I'd been too busy explaining to actually experience. I started sitting on my porch in the mornings without feeling like I had to justify it to anyone. I started saying no without offering 3 reasons why. I started keeping my money, my health, my days, my plans, and my loneliness to myself. Not because I didn't love my children, but because I loved my peace more. And here's the part that surprised me most. They were fine. They didn't need to know everything. They just needed to know I was okay. And once I stopped volunteering information they didn't need, the conversations got lighter. Warmer. More like the conversations we used to have before everything became about managing me. But I couldn't fit all of this into one video, so I wrote it down. Every boundary, every script for deflecting questions, every way to stay in control when your family is pressing for answers they have no right to. I put it all in a book called The Freedom Code. It just came out. It's digital. The link is in the pinned comment. And I have to be honest with you, I'm terrified my kids are going to see it. Linda already asked me what I've been working on. I didn't tell her. But if she finds it, if any of them find it, I don't know what they'll say. That's why I might take it down soon. Not because I don't believe in it, but because putting this much truth out there about them, about our family, it feels like crossing a line I can't uncross. But women are already writing to me. A woman named Diane, 76, said, I finally feel like I have permission to say no. Another woman, Patricia, told me, this gave me my dignity back after my son tried to take over my finances. And just yesterday, someone named Eleanor wrote, I thought I was the only one who felt this way. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. So it's there. For now, if you need it, get it. Because I don't know how long I'll be able to keep it up once my family sees it. Here's what I know now at 83. The people who love you will sometimes ask questions they have no right to. And your job isn't to answer them. Your job is to stay whole. To keep the parts of yourself that are still yours. To let silence be your boundary and peace be your reward. I spent too many years thinking love meant openness. Now I know love means knowing when to close the door. And if you're reading this, if you're my age or even close, you don't owe anyone your bank balance. You don't owe anyone a medical report. You don't owe anyone a minute-by-minute account of your day. You don't owe anyone a preview of your will. And you don't owe anyone your loneliness, packaged up and delivered so they can decide what to do with it. What you owe yourself is this, the right to be private, the right to be whole, the right to be respected, not managed. And if that makes you difficult, good. Be difficult. Be vague. Be maddeningly calm in the face of their questions. Because the alternative is spending your final years being studied, managed, and quietly erased. And I'd rather die than let that happen. The truth is, most of us spend our whole lives answering. Answering to parents, to spouses, to children, to bosses, to neighbors, to anyone who asks. And somewhere along the way we forget that no is a complete sentence. We forget that silence is a valid answer. We forget that we're allowed to keep things to ourselves, especially the things that matter most. I didn't learn this until I was 81 years old, and I wish more than anything that I'd learned it sooner. Because the years I spent over-explaining, over-sharing, over-answering, those are years I can't get back. But the years I have left, those are mine. And I'm going to spend them saying less, holding more, and protecting the small, sacred space I've finally carved out for myself. If this resonated with you, please share it. Not everyone will watch, but someone in your life is sitting at a kitchen table right now with someone they love answering a question they shouldn't, and they're losing a piece of themselves without even knowing it. You might be the reason they stop. Leave a comment if one of these 5 questions hit you. Tell me which one you wish you'd never answered, or which one you're still struggling to keep to yourself. And if you haven't already, the Freedom Code has everything. Every script, every boundary, every way to take your life back before it's too late. Women like Diane